So I've said it before and I've said it again. In my humble opinion, I think Francis is the worst pope in history. And there's been popes who are much worse in terms of their personal lives. Like there were popes who had mistresses, who ordered assassinations, who embezzled a bunch of money, all kinds of stuff like that. But I think in terms of causing mass confusion on a doctrinal moral level, I think he's the worst. Like if he just had a mistress or was like living a really luxurious lifestyle or embezzling money or something, like that would be bad. That would cause a lot of scandal. That would hurt the church's reputation. But I don't think it would cause the level of confusion among the laity that like this other stuff is. And I mean, at the end of the day, you can complain about Pope Julius II. You could say he abused his position to invade half of Italy. But at the end of the day, Pope Julius II was a massive Chad. And having a bunch of mistresses is just kind of like a normal thing that a prince does. I'm not saying it's good. It's immoral. It's especially immoral because the Pope's supposed to set an example. But that's like normal corruption. What we're seeing now is like a complete just implosion in the face of this dude. So anyways, we have an interesting case of intersectionality here. Rather than being intersectionality between the, I don't know, like women and minorities or whatever, we have intersectionality between the Pope and boomers. Because we have all these like memes going around about the Pope, and we have all these memes going around about boomers, and we also have the memes going around about Turning Points USA and the attempt to drive Charlie Kirk insane, and we kind of have all three of these things coming together in this. So I think what kind of happened is the boomers were upset, the fake conservatives were upset, and the Pope was upset. Because as you recall from the last video, a real human being and a real hero took the statue of Pachamama and threw it into the Tiber. And to that, the Pope said, "Give him back a Pachamama." And they managed to find it. And then he was like, okay, we're going to use it as part of the closing mass. But then they changed their mind. But to me, it doesn't like really matter if they used it or not, because they said it would have been licit to use it. But anyway, so he was mad about that. So the Pope made another one of his famous off-the-cuff statements. And I know people have said, and not even the people who try to defend him, but the people who say he's not as bad as some people make it out to say. It's like, to the average person, though, when the Pope says stuff like this, like, it's really complicated. It's really confusing. How is, like, the average dude supposed to know, like, is this infallible? Is this like binding? Is this just the Pope getting drunk and just rambling on about nothing? Like, I don't know. It's very like, I don't know. A lot of the people I talk to have no idea what the hell's going on. Like, people who study this shit don't know what's going on. So how is the average dude supposed to know? So when they see something like this and they go, this is the official position of the Catholic Church, I don't really know what they're supposed to think. So obviously, let's get into the article now. Pope compares politicians who persecute gays, Jews to Hitler. And this is where I say this whole like boomer thing and this fake conservative thing comes from. Comparing everything to Hitler is like peak boomerism. If you look at like fake conservatives in the States, every time anything happens, like, oh, they're building roads. You know who else built roads? The Nazis did. Obamacare is like Hitler care. Although Hitler care was actually, we could talk about Hitler care another time, because they actually still use it in Germany and it actually worked really well. But like just anything. When Obama said like share the wealth around, they're like, oh, it's like Adolf Hitler and stuff like that. And it's just a very boomer thing to do and a very conservative thing to do. So here we go. So we have Pope Francis denouncing all the persecution of gays and gypsies and Jews. Pope Francis denounced the persecution of gay people on Friday and compared public officials who stoked hatred and anti-gay sentiment to Hitler. It's just peak boomerism. Like, what are you doing? What the hell is this guy doing? I don't know. Francis delivered his remarks at an international conference on criminal law at the Vatican City, Reuters reported. It's okay. Let me try and do my Francis voice. It is not coincidental that at times there is a resurgence of symbols typical of Nazism. I can't do it. It's not translated very well, so I'm just going to say it is not coincidental that at times there is a resurgence of symbols typical of Nazism. That is a horrible translation. And he said, and I must confess to you that when I hear a speech by someone responsible for order or for government, I think of speeches by Hitler in 1934 and 1936. Once again, this is a horrible translation. And I must confess to you, when I hear a speech by someone responsible for order, what does that mean? Or for a government, I think of speeches by Hitler. Like, who? Who is he even, talking about? I don't even know. He said persecution against Jews, gypsies, and people with homosexual tendencies represent a culture of waste. So, we've gotten rid of the culture of death. That's not a thing anymore. We can't talk about the culture of death anymore. It's a culture of waste. Because excluding gypsies from society is just a waste. I mean, they contribute so much on a daily basis. The cultural achievements of gypsies and what they've contributed to humanity. I actually can't think of any. I'm sure there might be one thing, but I mean, I can't think of a people on Earth who have contributed less to humanity than the gypsies have. I mean, let's be honest here, people. You can say what you want about the Jews as a people, but they've made immense achievements in the sciences, in mathematics, physics, chemistry, all kinds of sciences. I know a lot of people don't like it, but they've made huge achievements in film. Regardless of how you feel about the films that they actually produce, the cinematography, the techniques, all that kind of stuff, they've produced a ton of useful things. But gypsies? And why is it even, is persecution of gypsies even a thing at the moment? I guess Salvini wants to get rid of it. And Salvini's been under a lot of criticism for doing, really bad stuff, like praying the rosary in public and encouraging other people to pray the rosary in public. And some cardinals in Italy have said, you can't be a Christian and vote for the Liga. Despite the Liga, I don't know. It's just peak boomerism. Okay, so a throwaway culture and a culture of hatred. He did not single out any particular politician or government. Francis also denounced race-based police brutality and corporate crimes against the environment, which he called a sin. So I'm not going to make a comment on this. I'm just going to read something from Catholic Answers. So this is the sins that cried of heaven for vengeance. So these are, okay, so most Catholics are familiar with the term mortal sin. Mortal sins deprive the soul of grace. They are serious transgressions of God's law, done freely and deliberately with a clear understanding of what they are. The result is to deny a soul the entrance to heaven. There are particular mortal sins that are so evil they are said to be sins that cry to heaven for vengeance. Murder, sodomy, oppression of the poor, and defrauding workers of their wages. Let's just read that list again. There are particular mortal sins that are so evil that they are said to be sins that cry to heaven for vengeance. Murder, sodomy, oppression of the poor, and defrauding workers of their just wages. Well, I think the Pope is really on point. I think it demonstrates a deep understanding of pretty much anything. As you guys know, I think this man is a genius. He's actually playing 4D chess. One day, it's all going to become clear, and the whole world is just going to be converted to Christ. That's how good this dude is. He's like the Nicol Bolas. If Nicol Bolas was the Pope, he would be Pope Francis. If I'm trying to think. If Mao Zedong had become the Pope, he would be Pope Francis. And I mean that in both senses of the term. No, Mao Zedong was way more competent than Pope Francis. Anyways, I don't know what else to say on this topic. It's a complete and utter disaster. Just more peak boomerism.